For decades, the United States cultivated the image of an invincible nation, capable of transforming any crisis into fuel for progress, while its cities were presented to the world as showcases of stability, social mobility, and a promising future. However, walking today through regions that once symbolized security and prosperity, something unsettling is revealed. A new, dense, almost uncomfortable silence hangs over empty streets, abandoned houses, and parking lots that, at nightfall, become makeshift shelters for entire families. This scenario, once unimaginable for the economic heart of the world, repeats itself with a frequency that no longer allows it to be treated as an exception. Workers who have sustained the domestic economy for decades now face the cruel paradox of holding down 2 or 3 jobs and still not being able to afford rent, basic services, or adequate food. Cheap motels become temporary homes, supermarkets become rest stops for those who sleep in their cars, and once vibrant schools now receive children who arrive exhausted after entire nights in vehicles parked on the sides of highways. These accounts do not come from the extreme fringes of society, but from people who, until recently, were considered the solid center of the American middle class. The fracture that emerges is not only in the economy, but in national identity. A country that always promised ascension is now witnessing a silent collapse that is advancing from the edges and beginning to reach the center. And it is at this point, where official discourse crumbles in the face of concrete reality, that the question guiding this investigation arises. What exactly triggered this rupture, and why did it begin without anyone noticing? Before we move on to the next chapters of this research, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This strengthens the reach of this documentary and helps us continue revealing what lies behind the image of the United States. Let's move forward, because what comes next delves even deeper into this story. The deepening crisis in the United States can be seen not only in the statistics accumulating in official reports, but primarily in the gradual shift in the social landscape, where previously isolated signs now multiply in an almost choreographed manner, revealing a country attempting to preserve an appearance of normalcy while grappling with the effects of a deterioration that can no longer be hidden. In cities that for decades sustained vibrant regional economies, the closure of small businesses has become a recurring phenomenon, leaving behind empty storefronts, silent commercial corridors, and an atmosphere of abandonment that intensifies with each passing month. The constant movement of moving trucks exposes the dynamics of this collapse, as entire families cross highways in search of more affordable states, even knowing that their chosen destination may present challenges similar to those that motivated their departure. The cost of living, which has always been considered one of the pillars of the American challenge, has reached levels that exceed the adaptability of the middle class, forcing stable workers to face decisions that previously seemed unthinkable, such as abandoning urban careers, sharing homes with strangers, and replacing essential purchases with community donations. Lines at food banks have grown to the point of becoming part of the routine in regions where this type of assistance was seen as an exception, not a permanent element of survival. At the same time, suburban areas that once symbolized family stability have begun to register alarming rates of homes for sale, not due to ambitions for progress, but simply because residents can no longer afford mortgages, insurance, or the continuous increase in basic services. These symptoms, distributed from coast to coast, demonstrate that the country is undergoing a profound structural transition marked by the accelerated loss of what for decades represented the backbone of its economic identity. The crisis does not advance explosively, but rather through small, repeated, almost invisible collapses, which together produce a national impact. Given this scenario, an inevitable question arises for those following this account. Which of these symptoms most catches your attention, and why? Behind the visible signs multiplying across the country, there is a silent mechanism reorganizing the economic base of the United States. Without offering any clear explanation to the population, that most depends on the stability of this system. While government speeches insist on attributing the difficulties to natural market fluctuations, in-depth analyses reveal that a significant part of the recent transformations was driven by corporate and political decisions that, although presented as strategic solutions, ended up weakening precisely the group that sustained the country's internal vitality: the middle class. The advance of automation, for example, reduced business costs while eliminating jobs that for decades guaranteed security to millions of families, creating a chain of vulnerabilities that unfolds slowly but steadily. The transition to an economy heavily centralized in giant conglomerates has allowed a few companies to accumulate disproportionate power, setting prices, controlling entire sectors, and influencing public policies that rarely reflect the real needs of the working population. Simultaneously, higher education, once considered the key to social mobility, has become an expensive and inaccessible commodity, pushing young people into long and suffocating debts that limit any possibility of development throughout adulthood. The healthcare system contributes to this situation by transforming basic care into almost impractical expenses, causing even families with stable jobs to constantly find themselves on the brink of extreme debt. These causes, which operate across various sectors, have not been presented to the public with the necessary clarity, creating the mistaken impression that the current collapse is merely the result of temporary circumstances or unpredictable events. In reality, it is a structured process that directs wealth to the top while removing support from the base that keeps the country functioning daily. The middle class, trapped in this mechanism, sees its purchasing power diminish and its planning capacity disappear without fully understanding why. Everything has become so unstable, and it is precisely in trying to understand this hidden origin that a new concern arises. If the causes have been underway for so many years, what consequences will this movement inevitably unleash? As the invisible gears of this system continue to operate without transparency, the consequences are becoming increasingly evident, revealing a country facing not only economic fluctuations, but a profound structural transformation that directly impacts the daily lives of millions of people. In regions once considered centers of stability, we observe the successive closure of community hospitals, the reduction of essential professionals, and the gradual deterioration of public services that can no longer keep pace with the magnitude of local needs. The impact of this disorganization becomes even clearer when teachers, nurses, and experienced workers report the need to take on multiple jobs to maintain a standard of living that was previously sustained with relative ease by a single source of income. Small inland towns are beginning to show signs of complete collapse, with reduced transportation networks, depleted commerce, and a continuous exodus of residents seeking new horizons without any guarantee that these destinations will offer better conditions. Urban decay intensifies with abandoned buildings, increased crime, and a sense of insecurity spreading through neighborhoods once known for their tranquility. As these changes occur, new dynamics emerge that further weaken the social fabric, such as the growing dependence on welfare programs and the increase in the population living in makeshift camps, often located near highways or abandoned industrial areas. These consequences, distributed across different states and social strata, reveal a slowly expanding process of deterioration, creating a perception that decline has become a permanent element of contemporary American life. The middle class, once a symbol of stability, watches its own identity unravel as it tries to adapt to a reality that no longer offers guarantees, only uncertainties. And in this scenario, it becomes clear that the country is not facing only isolated difficulties, but a broad movement that questions the very capacity to sustain the model that defined it for decades. Given these consequences, an inevitable reflection arises for viewers. Which of these impacts most represents the breaking point for you, and how far can this collapse go? Although the economic crisis is evident and its consequences can be observed in numbers, closures, and internal displacements, there is a less visible, yet equally devastating dimension that deepens the feeling of collective exhaustion in American daily life. This is a widespread sense of emotional emptiness that seeps into human relationships, urban spaces, and even expectations for the future, creating an atmosphere of loneliness that grows silently while the country tries to maintain an appearance of normalcy. In residential neighborhoods, modern apartments illuminated by high-definition screens replace interactions that once defined community cohesion, creating homes where technological comfort exists, but human presence becomes increasingly rare. The routine of the middle class has transformed into a cycle that combines long working hours, exhausting commutes, and a hyper-connectivity that rarely translates into real connections, fueling a feeling of emotional disconnection. Even in densely populated areas, people who once sought fulfillment in their jobs, stability at home, and community within their neighborhoods now report feeling like they are walking through environments that have lost their vitality, where shopping malls seem like vast empty corridors, and where silence does not symbolize peace but absence. This phenomenon intensifies in cities experiencing population decline, as the closure of schools, shops, and community spaces transforms entire regions into zones where social life dissolves before attentive but powerless eyes. Technology, which promised to facilitate communication and expand possibilities, has ended up contributing to a deeper isolation, since a large part of the interactions occur behind screens that do not replace physical presence, nor offer the emotional comfort that real interaction provides. This subjective emptiness, added to economic pressures, creates an environment where even those who have jobs and housing report the persistent feeling that something essential has been lost in the process. And as this feeling spreads, it becomes evident that the crisis is not limited to the economy, but reaches the realm of existence, shaping routines and perception of purpose. And when this void meets the data that the country tries to cover up, an even greater tension arises. After all, what do the numbers that never make the headlines reveal? Observing the crisis spreading across the United States, it's impossible to ignore the weight of official data, especially when confronted with the reality experienced by the population. This data reveals a growing chasm that silently persists while institutions attempt to downplay the severity of the situation. Discrete reports released over the past few years show that more than a third of Americans cannot cope with a basic financial emergency without resorting to loans, credit cards, or donations, indicating that economic fragility is not restricted to isolated groups but has become a permanent component of daily life. Student debt surpasses levels that decades ago would have been considered unsustainable, trapping young adults in repayment cycles that consume decades of work, sacrifice family plans, and delay any attempt to build a stable future. The pressure on housing costs adds another layer to this scenario, as rental prices have increased so rapidly that in many medium and large cities, highly educated professionals allocate more than half of their monthly income just to secure housing, almost completely eliminating the possibility of saving, investing, or planning for future advancement. Meanwhile, food banks are registering record numbers of people seeking help, many of whom are families with stable jobs who, even so, cannot meet their basic needs, revealing a paradox between continuous work and financial insufficiency. Medical debt, in turn, is one of the main causes of personal bankruptcy in the country, demonstrating that even the act of becoming ill has become a direct threat to one's livelihood. These numbers, while alarming, rarely appear with the necessary intensity in the news, as they expose a system that sustains itself through complex image-building mechanisms, creating a narrative that attempts to convince the population that everything is under control. However, when placed side by side, they form a clear picture that the country is facing a profound transformation that is far from temporary, revealing that collapse is not just a prediction, but an already established reality. Faced with such compelling statistics, a new question begins to emerge. If the numbers are so serious, what really awaits the country when the future finally arrives? As economic, social, and emotional indicators align in the same direction, a panorama emerges that suggests not only the continuation of the crisis, but also the concrete possibility that the country is entering a phase of prolonged instability, capable of redefining its own internal structure. International observers are already beginning to point out that the gradual disappearance of the middle class represents not only an economic challenge, but a systemic risk that compromises the United States' ability to sustain the operational model that made it successful during the 20th century. When a society loses the population segment that guarantees a balance between production, consumption, and stability, it opens space for tensions that advance through deep layers, transforming daily life into an environment marked by increasing uncertainties. Signs of this process become evident in the increase in inequalities, the political polarization that intensifies with each election cycle, and the growing dependence on debt mechanisms as a way to compensate for the loss of purchasing power. The pressure on essential services generates a noticeable domino effect in schools, hospitals, transportation systems, and public safety, which can no longer adequately meet the demand, creating pockets of vulnerability that expand silently but constantly. The widespread feeling that the future has become less predictable fuels a collective emotional state marked by anxiety and distrust, deepening the perception that the country is entering a phase in which progress is no longer guaranteed, but contested daily. This set of factors points to a decisive moment in which the nation needs to confront not only its numbers, but the human impacts that accumulate in the subtext of every political and corporate decision. And it is precisely when this warning seems inevitable that the question arises that many avoid, but which can no longer be postponed. What is left for a society when its hope begins to disappear? When one observes the sum of all the elements that shape the current reality of the United States, it becomes clear that the collapse is not limited to the economic field, but extends to deeper dimensions, capable of redefining the relationship that millions of people maintain with their own country. The collapse of the middle class, which for decades sustained the belief in the American dream, exposes not only structural flaws, but a gradual loss of confidence in the idea that effort, dedication, and discipline would be sufficient to guarantee dignity. What we see today is a population that, despite working harder than ever, lives with the growing feeling that the system has lost the capacity to offer a return proportional to the sacrifice required. This symbolic rupture creates a collective wound that is difficult to ignore, as it strikes at the emotional core that has always distinguished the American prosperity narrative. People who once believed in upward mobility now wonder if there is still room for stability in a scenario where opportunities become scarce and security, once considered guaranteed, seems to slowly evaporate before the eyes of those who try to resist the advance of this new cycle of uncertainties. The rupture between promise and reality transforms daily life into a terrain marked by doubt, in which future prospects become nebulous and the feeling of belonging weakens. When considering this set of changes, it becomes evident that the country faces not only isolated challenges, but a historical moment in which the absence of clear answers intensifies the perception that something much bigger is happening. The silence that emerges between the statistics and the empty streets reveals that the collapse did not begin when the economy receded, but when collective hope ceased to recognize tomorrow as a possibility. If this content helped you understand what's happening, subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications to follow new episodes of this series that exposes the hidden side of the American economy. Your support keeps this work alive and makes all the difference.